Hello everyone, welcome to Tutorialspoint. My name is Faz and in this video, you will learn Node.js from completely scratch. We will start from basics like what is Node.js, why you should use it, and then we will slowly move to topics like native modules, external modules, Express.js, which is a web server framework for Node.js, and then we will create this calculator. It will take two numbers as inputs and then based on the operation we select, it will calculate the result for us. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let's get started.
So the first question is, what is Node.js? Let's go to the official website of Node.js, open your browser and here search for Node.js and hit enter. The first link here is the official website, click on it. So here it says Node.js is an open source cross-platform JavaScript runtime environment. Let's understand this bit by bit. Open source meaning anyone can use it for free. Then it says cross-platform, which means Node.js can run on different operating systems. And then it says JavaScript runtime environment. We know what JavaScript is, a programming language that a browser can understand. But what is a runtime environment? I want you to think of your favorite dish and its recipe. In order to eat your favorite dish, you need to prepare or cook it. And where do you cook? Of course, in the kitchen. Why in the kitchen? Because kitchen has all the equipment you need to cook, like stove, oven, utensils, etc. Now think of this recipe as your JavaScript code and kitchen is the runtime environment for this JavaScript code. Just like how a kitchen has everything to follow a recipe and cook your favorite dish, a runtime environment has everything your code needs to run. In a very similar way, Node.js is one such kitchen for your JavaScript code to cook or run outside a browser. So basically, Node.js is something that lets you run JavaScript outside your browser. Now, the next question is why you should learn Node.js. Here is the scenario. In order to develop a full stack application, you need to develop its front end and back end. Okay. For front end, you know that we use HTML, CSS and JavaScript. And for back end, we use many languages like Python, Java, Ruby on Rails and many more. But thanks to Node.js, we can use JavaScript on the back end as well. That means you don't need to learn a new language for backend or hire a developer that knows some backend language. See, you are using JavaScript on the front end and now thanks to Node.js you can use JavaScript for the backend as well. Also, if you look at the job market, tech giants like Netflix, Samsung, LinkedIn, Uber, eBay, PayPal, everyone uses Node.js for their backend. And the average salary of a Node.js developer is $120,000. Alright, enough of talking. Let's start by installing Node.js. To install Node.js, open your browser and simply search for Node.js. Hit enter and the first link here takes you to the official website of Node.js. Click on it. Then click here to download the 20.10.0 version of Node.js. Okay. Once the download starts, wait for it to complete. Once the download is completed, open it. So this is the Node.js installer. Click on next, click I accept, then click on next, next again, next again, again next, and then click on in. Now wait for a couple of minutes until the installation takes place. It says Node.js has been installed successfully. Click on finish. To check if we have successfully installed Node.js, open your start menu and search for command prompt. Hit enter to open it. Here we can check the version of Node that we have installed by writing node version. Hit enter and it gives us the version that we installed from here. Okay. Now next thing is that we want to install a text editor. For this video, I will be using Visual Studio Code. You can use any code editor of your choice, but I'll advise you to use VS Code so that you can follow along with me easily. So let's install VS Code. To install VS Code, open a new tab and simply search for VS Code install. The first link here takes you to the official website of Visual Studio Code. Click on it. Then click here to download Visual Studio Code for Windows. And the download starts. Wait until it completes. Once the download completes, open it. So this is the Visual Studio Code installer. Click on I accept and then next, next again, next again. Make sure to check these boxes. They are very useful. Click on next and click on install. Now wait until the installation completes. So it has installed Visual Studio completely. Now let's start by clicking on finish. So this is the Visual Studio Code. Now let us start learning Node.js. I'm going to close this for now. Let's start by creating a new folder. I will call it Node.js and hit enter. Right click on this folder and there will be an option of open with code. Click on it. This will open our folder inside Visual Studio Code. Now let's start practicing Node.js, okay? Click here to create a new file. Let's call it index.js. Here we will write some basic JavaScript code like console.log hello world. To run this file using Node.js, you need to open terminal. Now one way to open terminal is click on view and you will have an option to open terminal. But a quick shortcut to open terminal is press Ctrl J on your keyboard and the terminal will pop up. Now to run this file, that is index.js, simply write node and then name of the file. In our case, it is index.js. Hit enter and it prints hello world to the console. Now we can code anything using JavaScript. For example, I will create a simple sum function. Now this function takes two inputs or two parameters and returns their sum. If I write console.log sum and then I pass in 2, 3, I'll save this file and I'll run it by typing node index.js. It should give me 5 and here you can see it gives me 5. Now this is basic JavaScript. Let's talk about Node.js. One of the coolest features in Node.js is the modules. Let's first close this terminal by pressing Ctrl J and I'll delete this code also. Now I will create a very simple function. I'll call it a reverse string and as the name says, this will take a string as parameter and it will return reversed string. Return string.split, then reverse, then we'll join them back. So these are basic JavaScript functions. Okay. Now let us try if this function works. I'll write a reverse string and I'll pass a string into it. Let us pass Tutorialspoint. Okay. To open terminal, press Ctrl J. Let me clear this terminal by writing clear. And now to run our file, I'll write node index.js. Hit enter and as you can see, it gives us the reversed string. Great. Now I will create a new file. Let me call this reverse string.js. Okay. And I'll take this function of reversing the string and I'll cut it and I'll paste it inside reverse string.js. Okay. Now see, this is reverse string function and it is inside this .js file. Now I want to use this function inside my index.js. How can I? We will simply write module.exports equals to, this will be an object, and inside object we will write the name of this function. I will save it now. Now let's go to index.js. In order to use this exported module inside our index.js, we need to import it first. To import it, I'll write const, let's call it file for now, equals require, and then I will specify name of the file. In our case, it is reverse string.js. Let me console.log and see what will we get inside file. Okay, let's save it, go back to terminal and write node index.js. Hit enter. It says module not found. Okay, I forgot to have a period here, so something like this. And now if I save and run again node index.js, hit enter, and as you can see, inside our file we are having an object, and inside that object we have this reverse string function, this one. Okay, now we are going to use it. As you can see, we have exported it. We have exported this reverse string function as an object, so we will import it as an object also. So instead of file, I'm just going to write an object, and inside here I will write name of the function. As you can see, it's already giving me hint that there is a function inside named reverse string. So click on it, and as you can see, we have imported reversed string from another file. Now I can use it. I can simply write console.log reverse string, and let's pass a string into it. Let us say hello world. Save this file, and now if I write node index.js, as you can see, it has reversed hello world. Perfect. So this was a little bit about modules in Node.js. Let's explore file system modules in Node.js. First of all, let's delete this terminal and let's close this index.js. I'll create a new folder. Let's call it file system module. Okay. I'll create a new file inside it, index.js. Now let's go to the browser and go to the official website of Node.js and click here on docs. Okay, so this is the documentation for Node.js. Search for file system. It should be here. Here it is. Let's search for mkdir, which basically means to create a directory using Node.js. So I'll just search for mkdir, and as you can see, not this one. Yeah. So this fs.mkdir, this fs stands for file system. Click on it. So this is one of the ways to create a directory in Node.js. Let me show you in VS Code. Okay, just open your VS Code. In order to use the file system or the fs module, we need to require it just like we did earlier. Okay, so I'll simply write const fs and it will be equal to require fs, and let me write it down. Fs stands for file system. Okay, now I will create a directory. Okay, create a directory. To create a directory using file system module, all you need to do is write fs.makedir. As you can see, it also gives us this hint. Now if you go back to the documentation, as you can see, when you use the makedir function, you have to pass some of the things, some of the parameters. First will be name of the directory you want. And this recursive basically means if you want to create subdirectories, here, as you can see, there is a temporary directory inside which is an A directory, and inside that is Apple directory, right? And then a callback function that will throw an error if there is. Okay, so let us try this one. mkdir, then I will write name of the directory. Let's call it my folder. And then we can write recursive, but we don't need to. Now this recursive, as you can see here, this recursive is only for subdirectories. We are creating just one directory, so we don't need to write recursive. And then a callback function that will check for some error. Okay. So if there is any error, then just throw that error. Otherwise, we'll console.log directory created. Okay. Now let's run this. Press Ctrl J to open terminal and simply write node index.js. And let's see that when I hit enter, whether a new directory named my folder is created or not. Hit enter. Actually, we are in the wrong directory. We first need to change our directory to file system module. If you write ls, you will see that we need to go to file system. In order to reach file system, I'll write cd file system. So cd basically means change directory. Hit enter. And now we are inside file system module. If you check, we have this index.js file. And now I'll write node index.js. Let's see if my folder directory is created or not. Hit enter. And as you can see here, my folder directory has been created successfully. And it also has logged to the console that directory created. So this is a way to create a directory using Node.js. So we just learned how to create a directory using Node.js via the FS, that is file system module. Now, next up, let me show you another thing, that if I use this again and I want to create subdirectories, let's say a parent directory and inside parent a child directory. In this case, we need to use another parameter, and this is called recursive. I'll set it to true. And then of course our callback function that will handle if any error occurs. If error, then it will throw that error. Otherwise, it will log to the console subdirectories created. Okay. Let me comment this one out for now and let's see if this code will work. Okay. Go back to the terminal and simply write node index.js. Hit enter. Okay. Now this error says file already exists, meaning that I commented this code out, but I didn't save my file. So let me just save it by pressing Ctrl S. And again, let me clear the terminal. And now I'll simply type node index.js, hit enter, and it says subdirectories created. And here you can see that a parent directory has been created, and inside parent there is a children directory or a child directory as well. So to create subdirectories, you have to use this recursive true object here. Okay. Now let us see how to remove a directory using the file system module. Okay. Let me go back to the documentation here and let us search for the removal. As you can see here, fs.rmdir. Click on it. RMDIR basically means to remove a directory. I'll go back to the VS Code and let me just press Ctrl J to hide the terminal. Let me comment this code. Let me write it down for you. By the way, all of this code will be available in a GitHub repository that you will find in the description below. Okay. So let me write here, creating sub directories. Okay. So next step, we will see how to remove a directory. Okay. So let us remove this my folder. Okay. I'll write file system dot remove directory, as you can see. Now here, I'm going to pass name of the directory. In our case, it is going to be my folder. And then I am going to pass a callback function which will handle error if any occurs. So if any error occurs, just throw that error. Otherwise, console.log directory removed. Okay. Now let me save this file by pressing Ctrl S, Ctrl J to open your terminal. And now I'll run node index.js and let us see if my folder is deleted or removed or not. So hit enter, and as you can see, directory removed and my folder is gone from here. So this is how we remove a directory using Node.js. Enough about directories, let's talk about files. Now let us see some of the operations that can be performed on files as well. Let us go back to the documentation and search for other options on files. As you can see here, it's fs.mkdir. This is what we already used. And now here is fs.read file. Okay, let us try this one. Click on it. And here it is an example how to use this. All right, let us go back to VS Code and I'll show you how to use this one. So I will create a file first. I am in my file system module and I will create a file. Let's call it tutorialspoint.txt. And inside this file, I will write some text. Let's say welcome to tutorials point, and I'll save it. I'll close it for now. Let me comment out this code and let me close or delete my terminal. Now, we are going to read a file, or basically we are going to read the contents of the file. We are going to read the contents of this file, tutorialspoint.txt. Okay. How do we do that? It's very simple. Simply write file system.read file, and then inside write name of the file. In our case, it is going to be tutorialspoint.txt, and then a callback function as usual. There will be two parameters right now. First one will be the error to handle any error, and second one will be the data that it will read from that particular file. So a callback function, firstly it will see if there is any error, then it will throw that error. Otherwise, we will console.log that data to us. Save this file, open terminal by pressing Ctrl J. Okay, make sure you're in the right directory. Right now I am in Node.js directory, but I want to go into file system module. So I will write cd, that means change directory to file system module. Now note this out here. Okay, note this out. If you just write cd and then write a file and then press tab, it will automatically detect what you are trying to say, right? So hit enter and you are inside file system module. And now if I write node index.js, let us see if we are able to read contents of tutorialspoint.txt. Hit enter and it is able to read something, but it is giving us these weird buffer values. Now what are these exactly? Now this right here is basically a binary representation of the data from tutorialspoint.txt. To get this in human readable form, we need to specify the encoding. So here I'm going to give another parameter that will specify the encoding. So I will write UTF-8. Okay, and then a comma. Now I will save this file, and now I will run again by writing node index.js. Hit enter, and as you can see, it gives me the contents of the file. That is, welcome to tutorials point. If I write anything here, hello, or maybe subscribe. Okay. If I save it, and now again I will run my node index.js, hit enter. As you can see, it reads all the contents of my file. Welcome to tutorials point, hello, and subscribe. Great. So this is how you read contents of a file using the file system module in Node.js. Up next, let us see how can we create and how can we write to a file. All right, I'll go back to the documentation, and here, if you search for write file, here it is, fs.write file. So this is the method that we can use to write to a file and to basically create a file and write content for it. I'll show you. Go back to VS Code, and here, let me just say create or write to a file. Okay. So basically, to create a file and to write some content in it, simply type fs dot write file, and then we are going to type name of the file we want. Let us call it greeting.txt. So we want to create a greeting.txt file. Also inside that greeting.txt, I want to say welcome to Node.js everyone. So this is what I want inside that file. And after this, the third parameter will be, of course, a callback function that will handle if any error occurs. So a callback function, if error, throw error, otherwise console.log, I don't know, let's say operation success or successful. Let's save this file, press Ctrl J to open terminal again, make sure you're in the right directory. I'll write cd and I'll go inside the file system module, hit enter. We're inside file system, and now I will run my index file to check if we are able to create this greetings.txt. So write node index.js, hit enter, and it says operation successful. And if we look here, as you can see, a greeting.txt is here. If I open it, there it is. Welcome to Node.js everyone. So we have successfully created a file and we have been able to write content in it as well. You may say that these are some of the very basic operations and why we need Node.js for it. But let me tell you, when you will work as a full stack or as a backend engineer, these operations are going to be really, really useful for you. Up next, we are going to see how to rename a file. All right. Okay, let's go back to the documentation and let's search for the rename operation. As you can see here, fs.rename, let's click on it. So basically, this is how we can rename a file. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio Code and implement it. If you go back to the documentation, you can see how this rename works. You simply write rename and then name of the file you want, and then the new name of the file you want, and then a callback function that will handle any error. Exactly the same we did earlier. So go back to VS Code, and here, so this is greeting.txt. I want to change it to something else. So I will write, I will comment and I'll write renaming a file for your reference. Okay. So to rename a file, write fs, and then we're going to use the rename method. Now inside rename, as I told you from the documentation, old name, then new name, and then a callback function. So what is the old name? So what is the old name? It is greeting.txt, and then I want its new name to be hello.txt, and then a callback function that will handle any error. So if error, then throw that error, otherwise console.log rename successful. Okay, I'll save this file. Now press Ctrl J to open terminal. To clear this terminal, I'll write clear. It simply clears the terminal. Basically, it just removes the history. So basically now to run this file, I'll write node index.js. Now keep an eye here and let's see if this greetings.txt changes to hello.txt or not. Okay, let me close these files and now hit enter to run node index.js. It says rename successful, and here you can see greeting becomes hello.txt, as you can see. So this is how you rename a file using the file system module. Now let us see how can we remove a file using the file system module. Let me comment out this code. And next up, we are going to see how to delete or remove a file. Okay. To remove a file, there is a method in our file system module, and it is called rm, which basically stands for remove. And inside this, we are going to pass some parameters. First is going to be name of the file. Let's say I want to delete hello.txt. I'll write name of the file, that is hello.txt, and then a callback function that will handle any error. So if error, throw error, otherwise console.log file deleted successfully. Save this, press Ctrl J to open terminal. Let's run this file again. Node index.js, hit enter. It says file deleted successfully. And as you can see, hello.txt is gone. Now, these were some of the basic operations we can perform on files and folders using Node.js. Okay. Now let's move on to the next section of our video, that is npm. So what is npm? When we talk about npm, we need to understand what is a package. Now, a package can contain anything from simple functions to entire frameworks. When we talk about packages, we are essentially talking about reusable code that can save us from reinventing the wheel every time we start a new project. And npm is the way we get these packages to use in our projects. So npm, or Node Package Manager, is a library for Node.js developers. If we go to the official website of npm, open Chrome or any web browser and search for npmjs.com. This is the official website of Node Package Manager. But first, to use packages in our project, we need to initialize our project with npm. Okay, let me open VS Code, and I have already created a folder named npm here. To open terminal, press Ctrl J. In order to use npm, we need to initialize our project with npm. To do that, I will write npm init. When I press enter, it will ask us some questions. So let's see that. Okay, it is asking for package name. Let it be npm for now. Hit enter. It is asking for version. Let it be 1. Hit enter. Description, let's say we are learning npm or Node Package Manager. Hit enter. Entry point is going to be a file named index.js, which we will create shortly. Hit enter. Test command, nothing for now. Git repository, nothing for now. Keywords, nothing for now. Author, let's say Tutorialspoint. License, let it be. And is this okay? Yes, it is. Hit enter. And as you can see, a package.json file appears. Let me click on this file and let me show you what is inside it. Okay, let me delete this terminal for now. And as you can see, this package.json file in our project directory essentially contains all the information about our project. For example, name of the project npm, version is 1, description that we wrote earlier, we are learning Node Package Manager. Then main or entry point is going to be index.js, and then other things like scripts. These scripts, basically, I'll tell you what they are. We will use them shortly. And then author is Tutorialspoint, and so on. So basically, package.json keeps track of our project's dependencies and settings, and I'll show you later on how. First, let me create this index.js file that is going to be the entry point for this project. Okay, so here, click here and write index.js. So this is going to be our entry file. All right, we will go to npmjs.com here, and the first package we are going to install is Express. Hit search. Here is Express. Okay, exact match. It says, let me click on it. So Express is nothing but a fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework for Node.js. Basically, Express helps us to create a web server in Node.js. All right. As you can see, it also has given an example of how to create a web server in Node.js using Express. But first we need to install it. Okay. But first we need to install this in our project. And as you can see, here is the installation procedure. All we have to do is write this npm I express. This I stands for install. Okay, so let's go back to our project. Let's open terminal by pressing Ctrl J, and I will write here npm install express. Now this I, as I told you, stands for install. So you can write install here, or simply you can write I only. It's one and the same thing. Hit enter, and as you can see, it will install express inside our project. Now if we go to package.json, as you can see, let me just close terminal by pressing Ctrl J. In our dependencies, we have express now. All right. That means we have successfully installed express in our Node.js project. Now in order to use express, let's go to the official documentation here. And as you can see, this is how we create a web server using express. Very, very simple. So first we need to import express into our project, or basically we need to require it in our project. Okay, so let's go back to VS Code and close this package.json. I am in index.js right now. Firstly, I will require express. Let's write const express equals require, and inside we want express. Okay, done. We have done the first part. So I'll go back and I'll write const app is equal to this express right here. So let me copy and let me paste. It's equal to this express. Okay, done. What next? Let's go back and let's see. Now it says app.get. It is using some get function. Okay, it's using a get method basically, and then a listen method. So I'll tell you how to use this. Go back to VS Code. Firstly, in order to run our web server, I'm going to write app.listen. Okay, so we want it to listen on a specific port. All right, so I'll write any port number, let's say 3000, and a callback function. Please bear with me and see how this works. So console log, I will write server started on port 3000. Okay, let me just save this for now and open terminal by pressing Ctrl J. Now here we wrote something called node and then index.js. So hit enter and now it works. As you can see, server started on port 3000. Great. So if I go back to my browser and I open localhost 3000, localhost 3000, hit enter, it says cannot get. All right, but it is working. Now, what do you mean by cannot get? Let's say if you open google.com, when you enter google.com, it basically sends a request to Google's servers, and the server sends back this HTML page to us, the Google search page, right? Similarly, when someone goes to this local host, when we go to this local host, when we hit enter, this sends a request to our server here in Node.js. All right, but we have nothing to send back. At least Google has this page to send, but we have nothing to send back. So we need to send back some information when someone requests on our web server, right? So when someone says localhost 3000, you hit enter, something should be displayed here instead of this cannot get. So we need to basically define a get method. I'll show you how. As you can see, if we go back to the Chrome browser inside Express's documentation, here as you can see, a get method has been defined, right? So let me just do the same. Let me close terminal by pressing Ctrl J. And here I'm going to write a get method. So our app dot get, all right. And then I'll use a slash. Now note this out. In a file system directory, a slash means root. Okay, root. For example, if we go back to Chrome and we say google.com, we are basically going to the root. All right. So basically, let me go back to VS Code and I will say app.get and then I'll specify the slash. This slash means when someone sends a get request to the root. When someone goes to localhost 3000, that is our root, I'm going to have a callback function. Now this callback function will have two parameters. First will be request, short form rec, and second will be response, short form res. All right. So inside this callback function, we are going to send a response. So our response is this res, right? So I'll write a res dot send. Let's send a simple text. Let's say welcome to our Express server. Press Ctrl S to save, and let's go back to Chrome. And if we refresh, nothing happens. Why so? Let me tell you. Go back to VS Code and press Ctrl J to open terminal. As you can see, our server started when we said node index.js. But then we made some changes. We added this get method inside our index.js file. Now we need to restart our server. So basically, I'm going to press Ctrl C to stop our server. Then I'm going to run it again by pressing node index.js. Hit enter and it says server started on port 3000. Now let's go back to Chrome and let's refresh and it says welcome to Express server. Let me zoom in for you. As you can see, when we sent a GET request to our local host 3000, that is our root, we got welcome to our Express server back. Exact in the same way, when we sent a GET request to google.com, the Google server sent us back an HTML page. So we have served this welcome to our Express server through our web server. All right. Now, what if I want to serve an HTML file? So basically what I'm saying is when someone goes to localhost 3000, they must be shown an HTML file. So I'll create one HTML file first. Let's say index.html and let's write some basic HTML here. Let's write a h2 tag that says welcome to Tutorialspoint. Okay, save it and close it. Now, let's comment it out. I'll keep this for your reference. Now, in order to send an HTML file, we use a method called sendFile. So res.sendFile. Now, inside you may say we can simply write index.html and this may serve the index.html file. So let us see if it does that. Ctrl S to save. We need to restart our server. Press Ctrl C to stop it, then press node index.js to start it again. Hit enter and server started on port 3000. So let's go to this port 3000 by localhost 3000. Hit enter and we have an error. And you can see the same error if you go back to VS Code in our console as well. The error is path must be absolute or specify root to res.sendFile. Basically what this is telling is that our web server is not able to find this index.html file. It does not know that there is an index.html file in our project. So how do we make sure that our web server finds this index.html file? We are going to use a module for that. An inbuilt module called path. So const path equal to require path. Now this path is an inbuilt module just like the file system we used earlier. Okay. Now, what is inside this path? Let me show you. Let me delete this file and let me write here console.log path. Okay, to show you what do we get from this path. Let me restart by my server by writing Ctrl C and then typing node index.js. Hit enter and it says server started on port 3000. Let's go back to browser and click on refresh. Nothing will come. Only a console.log to the path. So as you can see here, let me just, okay, as you can see, this path is nothing but a big object. All right. Now, one of the properties here, let me show you, is this join property. Okay. We can use this join property and I'll show you how. Let me just, all right. So let me just say path.join. Okay, let me save it. Let me write another console.log and let me write here directory name or dir name. Press Ctrl save and we need to restart our server. So node index.js, hit enter, and as you can see, this directory name gives us the complete path. We can use it, right? You already know JavaScript, right? So what if I write a very simple logic here, that is path. I will use this path.join, okay? Now this path.join will join two paths. Understand this. This path.join, the first will be directory name, which will give us this, and then we will add something to it. What will we add? Firstly will be the directory name, and then our index file, that is index.html. Okay, so understand what I'm saying. Let me write it. Let me just delete this one and let me write it again. We are going to write res.send file. All right, we know this is a way to send file through our web browser. Okay, then I'm going to use my path module. I'll write path.join. So I want to join basically these paths. Now inside path.join, I'm going to write firstly directory name, that is, this will be this one, users, Tutorialspoint, desktop, and then npm. And I want to join with it name of the index.html file, index.html. All right, let me save this and let's see if this works. I have to restart by writing node index.js again, hit enter, and it says server started on port 3000. Let me go back to Chrome, and as you can see, welcome to Tutorialspoint is here. That means our index.html file is successfully served through our web browser, right? So this is how you serve an HTML file using Express inside your Node.js project. Now, if you go back to the browser, go to Google, and as you can see, this is the root. Google.com is the root, and then there may be subroots. For example, if I write google.com/flights, it will take me to the Google Flights section, and so on. If I write /maps, it will take me to Google Maps, right? Similarly, a website has different paths. Let's go back to VS Code. Number one path is the root path, that is this /, and there can be more paths. For example, if someone wants to go to contact path, so I'll write /contact, right? There may be more paths. Let's say app.get, there may be a path of about us. So about us, or simply about, we can write. Let me show you about this contact, for example. So if someone goes to, basically what I mean here is that if someone goes to localhost 3000/contact, they should be served with something, right? So I will write a callback function again with res, and let me just send simple text right now. And by the way, we cannot just send some random text here, but we can also send an HTML tag. So I will write an HTML tag, let's say h1, and it will say this is contacts page. We need to close this tag as well. Let me save it. Now we have to restart our server again, and it's definitely a pain to restart server, right? We have to press Ctrl+C to stop it, and then write node index.js to start it. Server started on port 3000. Now, as you can see in our server, we have two paths defined. Firstly is the root path that will take a user to index.html. Second is the contact path that will take the user to this HTML tag, a simple tag. So let us try it. That means if I write localhost 3000, I am on this HTML page. But if I write localhost 3000/contact, I get this. This is contacts page option. I mean to say this contacts page line. Perfect. Now, one of the problems we need to solve right now is the pain of restarting our server again and again. To start our server, we write node index.js, and our server has started on port 3000. Fine. then if we make any changes in any part of our code, we have to stop our server by pressing Ctrl C, let us say, and then we have to run it again, node index.js. Now this is a pain. Every time you make changes in your code, you have to restart by typing a lot, by typing node index.js, by stopping, by pressing Ctrl C. This is a pain, trust me. Now to solve this issue, we are going to use an external library or an external package. So let us head to Chrome. And in Chrome, go to official website of npm.js and just search for Nodemon. It's already open, but let me show you. So click on search. And the first here is this Nodemon. It says simple monitor script for use during development of a Node.js app. Click on it. Now, what is Nodemon? It says Nodemon is a tool that helps develop Node.js based applications by automatically restarting Node.js application when file changes in the directory are detected. Perfectly. So whenever we change anything in any of our files, it will automatically restart the Node.js application. That is what we need, right? So we will install this. How to install? Here is the command npm install nodemon. So let's go back to VS Code. Let's stop our server. Now to install Nodemon, I'll write npm install nodemon. Hit enter and it will take a couple of seconds and it's installed. To check, just go to package.json, and as you can see in the dependencies, we also have Nodemon along with Express that we installed earlier for our web server. Nice. Now the next step is go to scripts here. Delete this test command. We don't need it for now. Here I'm going to write a command dev, okay, and its value will be nodemon index.js. All right, just press save. Okay. Now to use Nodemon, just close this package.json and now go to terminal and simply write npm run dev. This is the same dev that we wrote in scripts here, this dev. Now this npm run dev will actually execute this command, nodemon index.js. So hit enter, and as you can see, server started on port 3000, and now Nodemon is watching all of our paths, our extensions. It is watching all the changes. Click here to close package.json. Now if I make any changes in my code, it will automatically restart. Okay, and to restart, if you want to restart this server, you can simply type rs, hit enter, and it will restart. Now let's check if it will really restart. I will create another path or another route here. Let me say app.get home. Okay, so when someone goes for localhost 3000/home, then a request and a response in our callback. Then we are going to send res.send, let's say an h2 tag that says this is home page. Let's close our h2 tag. I'll press, now notice here, as soon as I press Ctrl S, this will automatically restart. So here I press, now here I press Ctrl S and it restarts. Now let's go back to Chrome, to our localhost 3000, hit enter and it works. If I type, contact, it also works. And we just created our home. So click on it. And as you can see, this is home page. It also works. Great. So now we have just solved the biggest pain of our project, that is restarting our server again and again. All thanks to Node.js. I mean to say, all thanks to Nodemon. All right. Now, another problem that you might encounter while building Node.js applications is that we are already serving a index.html file, right? We are already serving this index.html file when someone goes to the root, that is localhost 3000. Fine. Now let us say I'll go to this index.html and I'll link a styles.css file to it, right? So I'll just write this shortcut. This will link our CSS file, style.css. So let me just create this style.css file. I can simply copy this, press Ctrl S to save. Now here I will create a new file, style.css, hit enter. Now let's define some styles for our body. Let's say the background color should be black and the font color or the text color should be white. Simple. Press Ctrl Save. Now you will be expecting that this index.html will have a background color of black and a text color of white, right? Let's see if it applies. Let's go to localhost 3000, hit enter, and we have welcome to Tutorialspoint. But there is no change in background color and text, right? Why is that? Because here is the reason. Let's close these. Our application does not know that there is a style.css file. We only told our application that there is an index.html file in our directory, and we just joined the path using the .join method, right? Using the join method. Now, I'm going to show you a trick for this. Not a trick, but it's a way of doing things. Let me create a new folder here. I will call this public. Now I will do one thing. I will take this index.html file and I will put it in my public folder. It says, are you sure? I'll say yes, just move it. And also this styles.css, I will also put it in the same public folder. And it will ask me again, are you sure? I'll say yes, move it. Now our index.html and style.css file are in public. Is our server still working? Let's hit enter and it says no such file directory, because now there is no index.html here, but it is in this public folder. All right, great. Now we need to understand, we need to basically tell our Node.js application to use this public folder for our index.html and style.css files. How to do that? Watch this. I'll write here app. What is our app? It is this express, right? So basically I'll say app.use, and inside use I will write express.static, and inside this static method I will pass on the string as public. This public means this public folder right here. So we are telling our express application to look for this public folder, basically, right? And in this public folder we have index.html and style.css. Now let us save by pressing Ctrl S. Thank God our server automatically restarts. No pain now. Now let's go back to Chrome and let's refresh. And we have our page back. Welcome to Tutorialspoint. And also the styles have been applied. To check again, let's go into style.css and let's say background color is pink. Or not pink, I like purple much better, so purple. Press Ctrl S to save. Has the server restarted? No, it hasn't. If I press refresh, it has. So yeah, background color is pink and the text color is white now. So we have successfully linked our index.html and style.css files to our Node.js application. It can easily detect it with the help of this app.use express.static, and inside we have passed our public folder as a string to let our application know to use this public folder for our static files. All right. So we just created a very basic web server using Node.js and Express, right? And we served our index.html and style.css files. All right. We learned about some of the new methods, like how to use this .static method for our public folder to serve static files. We also talked about different routes we can make. This is the root route. This is a contact route. This is a home route. You can make thousands of routes like this, right? Fine. So this was a very basic web server application. Next, also we used Nodemon so that we can get rid of the pain of restarting our web server again and again. Now next we are going to create a calculator using Node.js. So this is the calculator app that we are going to create. Here we will enter any number. I'll write 200 and then we will select the operation, addition, subtraction, multiplication or division. Let's say subtraction. And then here we will enter a second number. Let us say 100. Very simple. Here click on calculate and this will display our result. So this is what we are going to make in our Node.js application. So I have opened VS Code and I have created a new folder, that is calculator app. And I have also changed the theme for my VS Code. You can also do it by going to settings, themes, and then select the color theme you want. I will not get into that right now. So to create our project, firstly we will open terminal by pressing Ctrl J. And now we are going to write npm init to initiate. If we write npm init, it is going to ask us those questions that I talked about earlier that are in the package.json as well. To skip those questions, we can simply use the y flag like this, hit enter, and it will set the default answers for everything. As you can see, a package.json is here. Click on it, and as you can see, we have this name, version, and other things. All right. Next thing, what is the next thing that we want to install? We want to install two things. We want to install Express. Why? Of course, to create a basic web server. I'll write npm install Express. And also we want to install Nodemon, of course. So we can write npm install Express, and then we can install Nodemon separately, but we can install them simultaneously as well. So I'll write npm install Express as well as Nodemon. So both of them will get installed side by side. Hit enter. Just wait and it will get installed. As you can see in our dependencies, there is Express and Nodemon. Great. Next, what is the next task? It is to create an index.js app. I mean to say an index.js file. So click here and write index.js. So this is our index.js file, or a more appropriate term, let's say right now, can be server.js file. Okay, so just go here to package.json and main rename or change it to server.js. Save it. All right. Close this for now. So we are in our server.js, and we will do our basic. We will start with our basic Express server. So constant Express equals require Express, and then we write const app equals Express. Of course, semicolons, they are not important here, but it is a good practice to include semicolons. Next up, what we used to do is we will write app.listen, then name of the port. Last time we were using port 3000. We can use any of the ports, so I'll just write a random number. Not a random number, basically you have some ports that you can use and that you cannot use. We'll talk about that in some other video, but for now let's say 8800, and then a callback function, and I'll write here console.log server started on port 8800. All right, we will save it, and now we will run our server. But how we used to do that, you have to go to package.json, and in your scripts you have to change it first. So delete this test script and write here dev, and its value will be Nodemon index.js. Save this file. Now close this package.json, and now let us write npm run dev, hit enter, and server started on port 8800. Another good practice is not to directly include port number here. So I will create another const, let's call it port, and let it be equal to 8800, and then simply I'll write here that port. Okay, and we can make this more dynamic, something like this. I'll use this one, and I'll write server started on, and we can use now JavaScript here inside the curly braces port. Okay, I will save it, and server started on 8800 it says. All right, so we have just created our very basic web server. Now let's create our first route, that is of course app.get slash, this is going to be a root, and here a callback function with the request and response. Now here, okay, there is an arrow here, make sure you don't make any typos. Let's first check if everything is working. Res.send I am root, not Groot, root. Press Ctrl S to save it. Server restarts automatically. Go back to Chrome and let's go to localhost 3000. Is it really working? Sorry. Why is not this working? Because we are not using port 3000, we are using port 8800. So I will write localhost 8800. Hit enter, and if I zoom in, it says I am root. Great. Now let us start. Firstly, we will create a basic index.html file where we will create the basic structure for our calculator application, right? So I am going to create a public folder. Inside public, I'm going to create index.html, and inside index.html, I'm going to write some code for our calculator app. Now I'm not going to explain that code because this is not a HTML or CSS video. So I have already pre-written some code that I will just copy and paste for now. So let me paste that code here. Okay, press Ctrl J to hide this terminal. It is taking up space. So this is the basic HTML that I have written. All of this code will be available in the description via a GitHub link. You can download it from there. And I have also linked a style.css file. So let's just create one. Inside our public folder, I will create a style.css file. And I have already written some styles that I'm just going to copy and paste because this video is not a CSS video, right? So I'll paste them here and press Ctrl S to save. And now how are we going to serve this index and style.css? If you can remember, what we used to do is, firstly, we will say app.use express.static, and inside this we are going to pass this public folder as a string, right? Awesome. Let me include some semicolons. Okay. And next is, whenever someone goes to the root of our application, we are going to send this HTML file. So I'll write res.send file, and inside this we'll write path, but we are going to require that path first. We are going to need to require it. So I'll write const path equals require. Inside it, I'll write path. Okay. Now here I'm going to use this path.join as we did earlier. If you skip that part, I will recommend you to watch that again. Previously we did this. Directory name, and after directory name, comma, the name of the folder we are basically serving our static files. That is the public folder itself, public, and then name of the file, that is index.html, of course, in as a string, index.html. Let me save this. Our server is running. Let's go back to Chrome and let's go to localhost, hit enter, and as you can see, our HTML page is here with all the CSS applied. Okay. Now it is all fine up to here. Let me just hide the terminal by pressing Ctrl J. Now here is the scenario. Let me go back to Chrome, and this is our index.html file, right? So this is the first number. When I enter some number here and I select whatever operation I want and I select some other number here, when I click on this calculate button, I want this first number, name of the operation, second number. I want all three of these to be sent to my server, and then I would write the logic to calculate whatever I have to, be it addition, subtraction, division, or multiplication, and then I want to send back a result here, right? So understand, we need these values in our Node.js application. First number, operation, second number. How to get these values from this HTML file to our server, I'm going to show you. Okay. First of all, let's go to index.html file. Here, if you can see, I have created a form. All right. And the method is post, of course. And we are going to use this post in our server. So make sure you remember this post. All right. Method here is post. You may have actually studied it if you already know about HTML. And then I have created some inputs. As you can see, this is the input for this first number. If I go back to Chrome, this first number right here, I have written 200, for example. So this input will store 200. Okay. Now what is important here is basically this attribute name. It says number one. Okay, remember this. Now similarly, I have created this another input. It is a label. Okay, the label is operation, and then for input I have used the select tag, and I have used multiple options: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And similarly for the second number, just like first number, I have again used an input that will take the second number. And of course, remember this number 2 is a name attribute for our second number. So what are the important things here is that for our first number, we need to take note of this. The name attribute is number 1. For the operation, the name attribute is operation. And for the second num, the name operation is number 2. Also, I have created a button that will basically that says calculate, and it is of type submit. Okay. Why are there two semi? Okay, let me delete one. Okay, looks fine. So as I said, remember these three things. Name, the name attribute for number first is number 1. For operation, it is operation. And for a second number, it is this number 2. All right, we are going to use it on our server. Now, basically, as I told you earlier, to remember this method post. When a user opens this page inside our browser, all right, let's say you write 200, you write the addition, you write 100. When you click on calculate, so this calculate is of type submit. This will basically submit the data inside our form, right? And it will submit via a post method. Okay, so we are going to use this post method. So we will go back into our server, understand this. And here we will use this post method. I will write app.post, very simple, and then root. Why? Because this is the root where our index.html is being served. So when someone sends a post request on our root, basically when someone enters these numbers and then when someone clicks on calculate, that person or that user is basically sending a post request, right? So we will capture that post request here. So app.post on our root, then a callback function. Request response. All right. Now inside we are going to write our logic. Our first task is very simple, not that simple, but it'll be simple in a couple of minutes for you guys. We need these three numbers on our server. These three inputs: first number, operation, and second number. Okay. But Express in its latest update, in one of the recent updates, basically pushed a new middleware that comes inbuilt with Express. So we are going to use a middleware. Watch this, try to understand, okay? I'm going to write here app.use, and inside use I'm going to write express.url encoded. Okay, now inside I'm going to pass an object that is going to hold a key value that is extended true. All right, you might ask what is this? I ask you to be patient and just wait, and you will know what this means. Okay, so basically this tells the Express that inside our URL, when someone sends a post request to our route, this our Express server will look inside the URL for values. What does that mean? I know it feels complex. Let me just tell you. Let me just console.log. First thing, when someone sends a post request on our route, I want to console.log rec.body.number1. What does that mean? That means whenever someone goes on to index.html on our page, enters these values, all right, and clicks on calculate, that sends a post request. We will capture that post request here on our server. So when someone sends a post request, I want to console.log request.body.number1. Now this body, if you check, let me just console.log this body only. Okay, now this body This body here will come from this app.use express.url encoded with extent set to true. Let me just save this, press Ctrl J, and server is restarted automatically. It says server started. That means server is running. I will go back here and I will write some numbers. Let me refresh. Now I will write numbers. Let's say 1000, and I want to subtract, let's say 500 from it. Okay. When I click on calculate, let's go back to VS Code, and as you can see, we get these values. We get all the values of the body, of the form body. What we get is number one is 1000 that we entered, operation is subtract that we selected, and number two is 500. Note these: number one, operation, and number two. These are the same if you go to index.html, and for each input, you can see a name attribute. It's number one. For the select, the name attribute is operation. For the number two, the name attribute is number two. These are the same attributes here. All right. They are used for this server processes. Okay. Let's close this index.html. So we have this rec.body function. We can make it more detailed. I will write console.log rec.body. Okay, rec.body gives us this object that has number, operation, and number two inside. To be more specific, I can just take this value out, number one. So I'll write rec.body.number1. Similarly, I will write more. I will write rec.body.operation. And the third value here is rec.body.number2. Let us just save this. Server restarts. Let's go back here. Let's go back to the local host and let's enter some new numbers. Let's say 500 is the first number, and now I want to multiply it by 2. When you click on calculate, go back to VS Code. As you can see, we get the 500, that is our first number. We get multiply, that is our operation, and we get the second number, that is 2. Great. We can use these values, right? So I can assign these values. It's very simple. I'm going to take this off. Just watch this. I'm going to write const number1 is equal to rec.body.number1. Simple. Similarly, for this one, I'll write const operation is equal to rec.body.operation, right? We are capturing these values, right? And for this one, I'll write const number2 is equal to rec.body.number2. Great. Let me just save it. Server has restarted. All right. So we have got these values successfully. When someone enters, let me just refresh localhost. When someone enters the value, operation, and the second number here, we will automatically get it, and we will save it in here in number one, operation, and number two. Fine. We have got the value. Now what? It's very simple. Once we have all these values, we are going to perform the certain calculation. If the operation is addition, we will add these two numbers and then send back the result. Right? So we have captured the values of number one, operation, and number two as well. Now let's write some logic. Okay. For the logic, we are going to create a variable that will store our result. Let's say result. All right. Very simple logic. I'm going to use switch statements here. They are very basic, and you may have already known about them. So basically, I'm going to write switch, and then it will be based on operation. This operation right here, whether it be addition, subtraction, multiply, and divide. If we go to index.js, I'm talking about this one. Now here you need to understand. I'll just show you. First is the operation, and then we are going to add cases. First case is if the operation is addition, but make sure that this addition here is same as this value here for these options. As you can see, for addition I have written add, for subtraction I have written subtract, for multiplication I have written multiply, for division I have written divide. So for addition I'll write add. So here, not addition, I'll write add. So if it is add, then the result, this result will be equal to number 1 plus number 2. All right, simple, and then we will break. Okay, so this will be the first case, right? What can be the second case? Now the second case can be simply for the subtraction. What is there for the subtraction? It is subtract. So I will write here for the case subtract, the result should be equal to number 1 minus number 2. Very simple logic, right? Basic addition and subtraction it is. And then we will break. Similarly, let me write for others as well. So when the case is multiply, that is multiplication, the result will be equal to number 1 multiplied by number 2. Sorry, number 1 multiplied by number 2, and then we will break. And similarly, for division, the case will be divide. And here we are going to write number 1 divide by number 2, and then we will just break. Right? And you know, in switch case statements, we need to have a default statement as well. So let's write some default statement. I'm going to write result is equal to, I don't know, let's say invalid operation, and then break. This is for any unusual cases. So let's write break. Okay, so we have done this. Let me just okay, so we have written some logic. Let me just hide the terminal by pressing Ctrl J. Let me zoom out a bit so that you can see clearly. We have written the logic for addition, subtraction, multiply, divide, and a default also. Now this is the calculation. We need to send it back, right? So we have written this logic part. Now we want to send this result. All right, let us first see if the calculations are right. So once all of this is calculated, the result is calculated. Let us console.log that result. Console.log. Let me save it. Server restarts. Now let's check. Let's go back and let's write 200. I want to add it with 100. It should be, it should give me 300 here in terminal. So let's check that. Click on calculate and go back to terminal. It says 200100. That's weird. Actually, that's not weird. It is basically appending two strings. Why? It is basically the first number is this 200 and the second number we entered is 100. Okay, so this is not a weird behavior. So we need to understand why this happens. All right, I'll show you. Here, when we are capturing these values via this post request, you need to understand by default they are in string form. By default, they are in string form. Now we need to change these to integer type or to float type so that they can be used for operations such as addition, subtraction, division, and multiplication. To do that, simply I'm going to use a very basic JavaScript function called as parseFloat. This will change these from string form to float form, to float data type basically. So parseFloat. No, not for the operation. We don't need the operation to be parseFloat. We only need the numbers to be converted to a float data type. So again, something like this. Let me press Ctrl S to save it. Now let's check again. Go back to Chrome, localhost 8800, hit enter. Let me enter 3000. I want to, let's say, add another 3000 to it. It should give me 6000 in my console. Click on calculate. Let's go back to VS Code and it gives me 6000. Perfect. Our simple logic is working. All right. Now we need to send this result back so that when someone clicks on calculate, the result is displayed here, right? To do that, let me go back to VS Code. Let me delete this statement. What I am going to do is, now let us send this result back. So let me write a res.send, and here I can simply write a result equals, or a result is going to be, I'll simply append the result variable. Okay. Press Ctrl S to save. And let's go back to Chrome and let us try if it works. Let's say 200, I want to multiply it by 2. So what is 200 multiplication by 2? It's 400. Let me hit calculate, and here you can see, let me zoom in it for you. It's 400. Let us little bit design that better, I'll say. First of all, our logic is working. I'll write 100 multiply 100, hit on calculate, it gives me 10,000. Perfect answer. I'll write 10,000 subtract, let's say I want to subtract, I don't know, from 10,000, let's say subtract 1,000, and it should be 9,000. As you can see, the answer is 9,000. So let me add a little bit styling to it, right? For example, what I can do is, let me change this to a h1 tag first. H1 tag, right? Result is going to be, I'll append the result variable, and then I will append the HTML tag back, something like this. Press Ctrl S to save. Let's go back to Chrome. Let's check. 10,000 minus 10,000 is 0. Okay, it's bigger and it's correct, of course, but let's add a bit more styling. All right, I'm just trying to mess around with inline CSS. So I'll write style equals, and I'm going to use single quote here because we have already used double quotes. All right, so use single quote here, and let me just say font size is 58 pixels. Let's add something more. Color, let's say blue, or I don't know. All right, fine, blue is fine for now. So blue. Let's put this in center. So let me just use position for now. Position is going to be absolute. All right, position absolute. And then let's say top 40% and left 40%. Press Ctrl S to save this. Server has restarted. Let's go back to Chrome. Localhost 8800. Now type here, let's say I want to say 500 addition 600. What should be the answer? 1100. Click on calculate, and it says result is 1100. It looks kind of okayish, at least for the project. Now the goal here is not to learn styling. It's not to learn HTML CSS, but our main goal is to create a very basic project in Node.js for complete beginners. So yeah, that is pretty much it. Let me just hide the terminal. So this is the code. We just applied some basic logic here, and we are able to build a working calculator in Node.js. All right. So that will be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this Node.js crash course. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, comment below with your thoughts or any questions you might have. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future videos. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.